OK, let's talk about France. Why were they so rubbish for the first 75 minutes, Jules?
It's a good question. They were flat. They were very sloppy in possession. I don't know if the virus... I mean, Deschamps said that everybody who started was 100% fit. We have to believe him. He didn't want to say that virus maybe had an impact on some of the players. We saw Varane, when he came off, he clearly looked like he could not breathe anymore. We saw Rabiot as well a little bit in that second half. Maybe a bit short of breath too. I don't know. But I don't think that's an excuse. They were just, at that time, beaten by a much better team. And sometimes you lose to a much better team. You can't always be at the same level of your opposition or better than the opposition. And Argentina, as we mentioned earlier, for the first 45, maybe 60 minutes, was just outstanding. Everything, the press with the ball to keep the ball well. They were winning all the duels, all the second balls. Their midfield was bossing our midfield. And there was just none of our big players in the game. No Giroud, no Griezmann, no Kylian, just nothing. So we were under pressure all the time. And to be fair, we were even lucky to only be 2 goals down at half-time. So I think it took a lot of effort and energy from the boys. The substitutions worked to a certain extent. Argentina, we were saying with Xhaka before, we usually lose a bit of control in the second half always because physically they drop, like we saw against Australia and the Dutch. And that's how we came back in a way a little bit into the game. But we have to be honest here that we played badly, but because the opposition was so good for an hour.
Why did they start so slowly, Frank? Because it's Argentina, it's the World Cup final. It's not as if you're going into this as big favourites and you're being suddenly taken by surprise by underdogs. It just seemed they just were completely almost unprepared.
Yeah, but don't forget that you have many people who were missing before the World Cup. And we talk about Kanté, we talk about Pogba, we lost Benzema and some others. You have a young team and they took the leadership. But remember, against England, they didn't play well. They went through, but everybody agreed that England played better. Against Morocco, they were really fragile as well, you know, and they found a way to cope with the situation, scoring only 1 goal, 2 goals at the end of the game to finish the game. But it wasn't that perfect as well. So it can happen. It's all about timing, you know. In football, you come onto the pitch. You don't know what's going to happen. You have question marks about yourself, your teammates, and the way we're going to play and the tactic that the coach put on, but you don't have the answer until you try and you are on the field. And sometimes you don't know why, nothing works. And today, nothing works. Yeah, I hear about their tiredness, but when you start playing at the 75th minute and run like they were running, of course, substituting some players, you cannot put the tiredness in front because, for me, it wasn't the case. No, as Deschamps said, there was a team, Argentina, which decided to play a World Cup final, and I think another team, France, who didn't realize they were playing a World Cup final. And they woke up after 75 minutes. The answer, I don't have it. Only the players can answer to that. But I guess it's sometimes nothing works.
You mentioned before about Mbappe.
Well, it's not down to one player. Just to piggyback on Frank's point, looking back now at the defeat and the recent performances, yes, in some sense they got away with the England performance. Lloris made saves. Second half against Morocco, maybe Morocco's lack of a real, you know, out-and-out goal scorer and their lack of depth. Today they didn't get away with it. Yeah, the game was the most exciting end to a World Cup final I think any of us can remember, and we can be thankful for that. But for 80 minutes, they were behind the 8 ball, certainly for 45, and you got to ask yourself why. I felt sorry for Olivier Giroud for all that man has done in his career for French football, for Didier Deschamps and breaking record. He was a consequence of the shambles behind him. And he did no wrong. He might not have got the service or had a great start, but there's nothing that man could have done.
Right.
The 2 wide guys were a disgrace early on. Now, Ousmane Dembele had a bad touch in the first 10 minutes. The ball went under his foot and went out for a throw, and he never recovered. His confidence was shot, and we all know he gave the penalty away. I've talked, and we've talked long and hard about Mbappe's work rate on this show. And that was non-existent in the first half. And what was happening was, Rodrigo de Paul was getting the run of that right side. He was coming back to help when needed, which wasn't very often. And when he wasn't needed, Mbappe wasn't tracking back, and they were getting a 2-on-1 with Messi on Hernandez. And when Rabiot finally started coming across, and don't forget, and Jules was talking the last 24 hours about Rabiot has been quoted as saying, I'm happy to do the job of two men. Well, that's fine when you're dominating games. It's also fine when you're healthy. The man's been ill.
Right.
But so when he finally started coming across, it meant Tchouaméni had to come across, and it meant they could go down the other side to Di Maria. And when that balance didn't happen correctly, and Tchouaméni and Rabiot, there was a big space because he was covering the left side, Argentina were poking balls through the middle of the park. And that's a huge reason why Argentina dominated the midfield. And it's also a huge reason why Didier Deschamps then thought, I can't have this. We're getting destroyed in the wide positions. My fullbacks are getting destroyed. So I have to put Kylian Mbappe through the middle. I have to bring a change on the right. I have to bring a change on the left. But they're already behind the 8 ball. And I'll go back to this. Dembele just had a poor game. He was always coming off. I'll go back to it. Mbappe, you know, the 2 penalties, the steal to do that, and the fantastic volley, and all these great moments. You cannot deny that. But you also can't deny when your back's against the wall and Argentina are playing as well as they are in the midfield. You have to be able to come back in and help. They never did that. You can throw Griezmann in there as well. And I felt sorry for Giroud. I also felt sorry for Rabiot and Tchouaméni because they got a roasting in there. But there's a bigger picture to this. You have to roll your sleeves up. And they were 2-0 down before France rolled their sleeves up.
Should Deschamps not have predicted that before the start of the game, though? That was the way it was going to play out?
They've managed to have what you would call success to this point, playing that way. Although, as I said, they got away with it to a certain extent. But Argentina were a little bit cuter in how they exposed that. And you know, midfielders having to come across to cover at this elite level. The clever players, and Enzo Fernandez has been fantastic. McAllister was brilliant. I mentioned Rodrigo de Paul. It just gave these guys areas to poke balls around the corner. Centre-halves didn't know where to step in. And it all starts from the front. And what was the end? What was the result of it? Your main striker had to be dragged off 40 minutes into a game. So you start badly, it's difficult to recover. They almost did it, but they were behind the 8 ball.
To your point, the formation already on the field told you the way that they were set up, that it was going to be 4v3 in the midfield for Argentina. It's already there, right in front of you. We don't have to make it up. Simple math. If you don't have one of those outside guys that Craig is referring to dropping into positions where they can help defensively, it always stays 4v3. And if then you have those guys having to come across to make up for that space, it's no longer 4v3 because one of those guys takes himself out of the picture. Now it's 4v2 and we're going to the other direction. That in itself, that freedom to then be able to find transitions through McAllister, who we saw popping into those spaces that Craig is alluding to, and then being able to find the outlet to then isolating on the other side to Di Maria, and then the success that Di Maria had throughout the course of the match. They knew coming in it was a mismatch in the midfield. Both of the teams knew it was a mismatch. So how do you address it? You need that help. If you don't provide that help, that mismatch stays. And it stayed like that until changes were made.
Is that critique fair, Jules?
Yeah, I think so. I think Deschamps, despite reacting by taking off Giroud and Dembele, maybe got the tactic wrong at the beginning. We know that he thought about starting Thuram and not Giroud from the start. And maybe that could have made a difference. But then there are things like what really, really disappointed me is the penalty that Dembele gives away. Not for the foul, he's a bit clumsy, he's not a defender. He's had to defend a lot in this World Cup. We've said that to compensate himself as well for Kylian on the other side. But it's Angel Di Maria on the ball. And he's right by the corner line. There's only one thing that Angel Di Maria will do all his life. He only has one foot, by the way, the left one. So he was only ever going to come inside from his left foot, and Dembele just goes quickly and gets done literally like an under 11. Literally, that's how easy that was for Di Maria to say, you're coming quick, here you go. Come inside with his left foot, little hook with his left foot, come onto his right, and after that, Dembele was always going to make that foul. And for me, we've talked about before how ruthless France are and how good they were, and that's why they won 4 years ago, and that's how they got to the final. this was stupid. It was completely stupid from Dembele. And I think without that goal, Argentina were the better side. We've said that, no problem. But at least if you keep it 0-0 for a bit longer, maybe the rest is slightly different. But from that goal, when you 1-0 down, after that, everything goes to pieces.
The French didn't. I mean, the French obviously.
Dan,
1 second, Frank. The French.
sorry.
The French didn't play well. Just 10 seconds. But Dembele was to me one player that looked as if the occasion got to him. The occasion got to him.
Go on, Frank.
Yeah, we want to come back to what Ali said about the midfield players, Argentinian midfield player playing at 4 in the middle, where we already had that problem against England, where you had Tchouaméni, you have Rabiot, and you have Griezmann. And against England, you had already the same problem, because only we're defending against Rice, Bellingham, and Henderson. And because you choose to keep Dembele on the field, where I think, without being too critical, missed his World Cup, made too many mistakes, didn't give the right assist when he had to do, didn't score enough for me. Deschamps kept on playing him, where in fact asked him to do what he's not able to do, meaning defense. And as Jules said, when he was forced to do so, he was making mistakes like he did today to Di Maria. I think there is something to resolve for Didier Deschamps. It's his midfielders, because he's going to be outnumbered all the time. Because all the teams going to know that they have to play at 3 or 4, one guy more than the French team, and then they're going to be in trouble. And because you know that Mbappe is not going to defend, you know that Dembele is defending but not well, it's going to be a big mess. And it's what happened for 75 minutes today.
I think hindsight, as Joe said, I mean, Thuram in and Mbappe through the middle, but then, I suppose it's a manager's job, but you have a conversation with a guy who's just broken the French goal-scoring record and who generally, over the last, 6 or 7 years, has done an amazing job for you. To go and say to him, you're not playing in a World Cup final because I'm a bit worried about him not running back, is a difficult conversation. Maybe it's one that's what he's paid to do, some people would say, but, hindsight, they just got absolutely sort of mullered in there. But I don't think even Deschamps, when he was looking at Argentina, would have imagined that they would have played as well.
Right.
That even with the extra man, that they would have been able to, in a World Cup final, when they to pass it as crisply, as and around people, 1 touch, 2 touch, just makes them great. I mean, McAllister, we talk about players. Tchouaméni is at Real Madrid. Rabiot is at Juve. These are all guys that are playing at huge clubs. McAllister's playing at Brighton. And yet he turns up and he takes, with all respect, but he's playing in the Premier League, but he's playing at Brighton. They're going to be, absolute mid-table at most. And he's playing like that in a World Cup final. I mean, that takes an amazing amount of guts.
If I go back to the substitution by Deschamps, if you're willing to make a change 41 minutes in, it's because you'd already thought about this. Right? This idea had already crossed your mind. It was already
so he
there.
second-guessed himself almost.
It was already simmering. It was already bubbling. And then what you saw was confirmation of what you already knew. It's just he didn't trust himself to make that decision from the very beginning. It's a tough decision to make, and obviously now that we know the result, we said, well, why didn't you do it? But many became so obvious so early. So much so that he's willing to make that change 40 minutes in.
Frank, you spoke to Deschamps after the game. Did you get any sort of sense that maybe this is his last game in charge?
Didier Deschamps didn't win the Euro. And we know from the president of the French Federation that if Didier Deschamps reached the semi-final, he would decide himself if he wants to carry on or not. So it's really up to Didier Deschamps. And Didier Deschamps is a winner. He wants to win the Euro. He missed it in 2016. Didn't work last time, a year and a half from now. I think it's what I feel. He wants to carry on, until the Euro, and after we'll see. Just one thing about the substitution that Ale was referring to. An hour before the game today, we were told that Marcus Thuram would be starting instead of Giroud. So he's right. It was really in Deschamps' mind.
The French had a bunch of injuries. The French were never at their best during this tournament, yet they got to a final and were a big gangling leg away, Martinez leg away from Koulibaly winning it for them. It is what it is for them. It's go away and I'm sure they're not quite Germany and setting up 2 task forces or whatever.
Where's Jan?
But that's how close they came. So, you know, disappointing for them.
Right.
But they showed an unbelievable amount of backbone and guts just to keep going and keep grinding away. And as Mbappe grew into the game, every time we got on it, towards the end, as it got to the last 5 minutes and then injury time, then the first half of extra time, we started to see the Mbappe that we knew. He was just, the chest was out, and he was like, I'm now the man. Messi's done. He's knackered. This team are on the ropes. And he started to pick that up. Then these young guys that come on just made a huge difference. So there's lots to admire about how the French came back, but there's also quite a lot of questions about how they were completely outplayed for long periods.
The thing that I would be most disappointed if I were France, besides the tactics, besides the things that we just talked about and the decisions made or not made by Didier Deschamps, is the lack of understanding and recognition of who you're playing against and the type of players and the culture that you're playing against and what Argentina looks like in a final. You knew, if you have done your homework, that Argentina would come into this game and make it physical. You knew that Cuti Romero was going to come with a late challenge, that Otamendi was going to come with a late challenge, that their physical presence was going to be there. You also knew that there were going to be moments in which they were going to embellish a foul. You knew there were moments in which they were going to come over to the top of the ball, that they were going to challenge. They're going to get challenged, to get in the face of Antoine Griezmann. They were going to challenge him and say, all right, Greasy, you here to play or what? Because we're here to play.
Yeah.
And France were surprised by that. France were not ready for this. They were not ready for all the picture that Argentina provides you in a final. Everything in their repertoire, everything in the locker that they bring to the final. Not only the quality of keeping the ball, not only the quality of playing through lines, not only the quality of finding Lionel Messi, but all the other things, the extracurricular stuff that I love so much, the dark arts, if you will, that Argentina are so very good at. And France were kind of like, wait a minute, we don't know how to deal with this. And they didn't deal with it for 75 minutes.
Apart from the little bit of sort of laziness early in the first half that I talked about, as the game wore on, I think certainly from half-time on, the French can say, look at their players and say, we put everything on the table in the end.
Right.
We screwed it up early, but we put everything on the table. And I think epitomised by Raphael Varane, who could barely walk it. When he cleared that ball in the corner flag,
he was just done.
The guy missed the last month of the season before the World Cup. He's been in and out. He was ill, I believe, recovered for this game, and you just saw by the way he trudged off. He probably knew they were going to lose. He thought it was all over, and he had put absolutely everything on the table. And I think if you do that as a player, there's not a lot else you can ask yourself. Go on, Frank.
Craig, it's why we can't feel sad about what happened today. We can be frustrated and disappointed. But
I think you need to tell Jules that more, Frank.
Don't forget that. Jules, take it easy, my man. Take it easy. Remember that we won the World Cup. But Jules, we won the World Cup 4 years ago. We played 4 finals in 7 World Cup. We played 2 European Championship final in 24 years. We shouldn't complain. We are a small country. We have only 2 million people playing football, and we have that resume. I think, yes, it's disappointing, but we cannot be sad. Because only one team, one country can win every 4 years. I think we've been very fortunate, and we should be proud of our football.
No, well, that's a positive outlook.
I like that. That's good.
I don't know many small countries with I don't know many small countries with 50 million or whatever it is.
Jules, looking at it overall, obviously because of what transpired, as Frank said, kind of France can leave with their heads held high. Would you prefer that and to have all the drama and the hope and kind of the gut punch in the end, or would you just take the 2-0, walk away, thank you very much?
I mean, I have to say, when the defeat happened, I thought I would rather lose 2-0 than coming back like this, show that character, show the heart, and then lose on penalties because it's so cruel.
Yeah.
Now that we discuss it, now that we talk about it, there's a lot of positive to take even from that defeat tonight, as heartbroken as it was, of course. And we mentioned the young players. I think there's a great future ahead for Thuram, for Colomboigny, for Tchouaméni, for Fofana, who I thought did well when he came on, for all that generation, Upamecano, Konate, Saliba. The future is bright, and that's why Didier is going to stay. Deschamps is going to stay because he's not stupid. He can see that even with all the players missing, no Benzema, no Pogba, no Kanté, etc., we still were the second best team in this tournament and that close of winning it. And then the future is so bright, certainly for the next 18 months and maybe even after that. So of course he will stay. As disappointed as he is right now, it's just hard to take for now. But yeah, you would have to be encouraged still by some of the performance, some of the individual performance that we see through this tournament. Collectively, at times as well, it was not always perfect, of course, and there's a lot of room for improvement. But I think going forward, you can also, once we've all gone over the disappointment of that defeat on pens, that we can take some positives away.
All you need is a good sleep, Jules. A good sleep.
I tell you what, try not to miss my flight. I sleep on the plane.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN+.